Welcome to the Decent People podcast, a production of Decential Media, where we're committed to telling the stories of the founders, builders, and visionaries who are creating a new decentralized economy and internet experience. You guys know it as Web3 or blockchain, and we're going to bring you the smartest and most interesting people in the space for intimate conversations that reveal their background, how they got into crypto in the first place, and what they're doing today to make a decentralized future a reality. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to check out our site at decential.io. Now, to the show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Decent People podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Ladden, here this week with Grammy Award nominated record producer Aaron Albano, also known professionally as Ming. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, you've had quite the career in music. Did you always know that that's what you wanted to pursue, or was there some other aspiration back in the day of
it's funny because I always did want to be a musician. I was really into rock music as a young person. I had the long hair, like the whole thing. I played guitar and I played a lot of rock and metal bands, and I always believed in that sort of musician's dream. I also was very good in sports, so I played baseball, and at some point in my baseball career, I had to make a decision between sort of sports and music, and I went the music direction. And then at another point, when I was in high school, my parents were really pushing me to go off to college. I've been playing in sort of an all-star group. I was the youngest guy in a five-person act that was, most of the guys were in their 20s and early 30s, called Insects, and we were opening for bands like dotcom and Extreme and Alice in Chains, and like doing very big shows. But they kept pushing me to go to college because have something to fall back on. So I ended up studying electrical engineering with an emphasis in audio, still audio related, but it was very technical, which was great for me because when I got out of college, I was able to parlay that into a web career, and that kind of is what funded my music career. And then around 2000, my music career took off, and I never looked back.
When you say it took off, was there a seminal moment or experience that kind of launched everything?
I was in the group Ming and FS. We were an experimental hip hop and drum and bass group, and we had signed a deal with Ohm Records in San Francisco, and we were going on our first full-length tour, I think in the fall of 2000. Maybe it was like 30 something dates. And that was just when the internet bubble burst. And so I had gotten laid off maybe around June of 2000 with a good severance. And then I was going on tour in September. So I kind of was like, all right, well, I have this money in the bank. It's time to make the switch and really focus on not looking back and not falling back. Somebody told me early in my career, if you have something to fall back on, you will. And I took that very seriously, even though I was educated and I had a good skill set. I could program. I was a project manager. I could make a living in New York City. I was taking this music thing as if like it was do or die, basically. So I figured out how to budget, and I figured out, what we would need to do to survive the next year. And we went on this tour where we made barely any money. It was like a trial by fire, and it was amazing. I learned so much about touring and so much about how you make money on the road and merchandise and just all of that stuff. And I think that was sort of the key moment. It was sort of serendipitous, the bubble burst in the internet business. So I was at a startup, and that startup didn't get its fourth round of financing. So it was sort of that like, okay, here you go, out on the road, but it was good. It was magical.
Right. And so in that sense too, timing was sort of everything in a way.
I think timing is always everything. People call it good luck, right? But I think good luck happens to people who are working really hard. I mean, I was working 50 hours a week at my internet job. I would come home and sleep for 2 or 3 hours. I'd get up, I'd work on music with my music partner for 4 or 5 hours. And then I would go out and market and promote us at clubs from 11 to 1 a.m. I did this relentlessly for 4 years.
Wow.
And I mean, in Manhattan at that time, it was like pinnacle club scene. So I could go, work on music, go out, meet all the industry people, basically go to sleep a couple hours, get up, and just rinse and repeat. And then when we started touring, this is before we went on like full length tours. we would start, maybe fly out on a Wednesday. I'd fly back in on the red eye, go sleep under my desk at my internet job, and get up in the morning when my boss came in and, like, did my thing. And I did that. I would do that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, fly back, fly out Friday, fly back on the red eye Sunday, go to work in the morning. I mean, I was burning the candle on both ends, and it was relentless. So, but it was rewarding. It was what I wanted to do. It was exciting to be part of both of those things. It was exciting to be at a startup or startups where there's a lot of interesting technical things happening. And it was exciting to be, part of a music scene that was burgeoning in America, because I was part of the electronic music scene, and that was not a thing at the time. It wasn't like EDM that people talk about now. It was this weird thing, weird DJ music that people didn't really understand. The mainstream didn't understand. So I was kind of part of these two, I don't know, exciting waves happening. And it was, the internet business in the early 90s, late 90s was just wild. It was just like crazy parties and, interesting people. And there was no like rules. It wasn't corporate.
Right. And do you think that experience in sort of a startup in that era positioned you well for, what was to come years later, what we're experiencing now, this new age of crypto and stuff like that? Do you feel that the intersection between music back then and, say, the dot-com era has helped give you a solid base from which to understand what we're currently experiencing in the cryptocurrency arena and stuff like that?
I think so. I mean, I feel like it's sort of, as they call it now, we're Web 3.0, but I was there for the Web 1.0 days. And so I remember the energy and the excitement around this thing that people really never understood. Businesses wanted to get in. I taught myself how to code HTML and do websites by telling a business while I was in college that I knew how to do websites. I gave them a budget. I told them it would take me 6 months to make the website. They didn't know. I didn't know. I learned how to make the website. I did it, in 3 or 4 months after, like, it didn't really take me that long, but I was going to school and figuring it out. They were happy. I was happy. And I took that skill set and then was able to parlay that into a job when I graduated. It's the same feeling. It's this feeling of, we know that there's something out there. We know that what's currently out there has kind of gotten clogged. Sort of the arteries of the system are a little bit clogged. It's too much advertising, too much tracking, too much information being sold that people don't want to have sold. And, it's sort of like the darker side of the web has kind of been happening in Web 2.0 for a little bit. And social media wasn't around when I started. Social media has kind of darkened the playing field a little bit. And I think people are really looking for that next wave, that decentralized version of themselves where they can be a little bit more anonymous, but also tap into things that are less tainted by, bots and the system and corporations pushing algorithms at them. I think that that's an exciting time for a lot of people.
So in many ways, it's more of an opportunity in some ways to get back to the art and what it means to be a musician, what it means to be an artist, what it means to communicate directly from, one's mind, one's soul into their channeled arena, and then into hopefully the hands and minds and eyes and ears of people.
100%. I mean, I think the hardest part about having a music career that people don't understand is that you, as a creator, spend an inordinate amount of time making something that you believe in. It could take you 10 minutes, it could take you 20 years. You craft this thing, whether it be music or art or poetry or all of those things together. You hope that an audience will love what you've done, but you really have made it for yourself. It's like, it's your inner child, right, coming out. But then the business kicks in, and without the business behind you, it almost doesn't matter how great your music is. Your 1 in a million shot is really 1 in a billion. And with all the algorithms and everything fighting against eyeballs, I mean, it's easier to get eyeballs on social media if you're an attractive person rinsing and repeating the same whatever nonsense it is that you're saying. It could be totally base, lowest common denominator. Great music doesn't necessarily bubble up in that system because they want 15-second sound bites of, a wink, a smile, a nod, and rinse and repeat. And that's not great music. Great music takes time to sink in. It takes time for people to understand. It takes time for people to digest and make it their own. And I think maybe Web3 and DAOs and NFTs really can bring it back to creators, where people are able to invest in things that they believe in and want to foster their creation, and aren't necessarily worried about the quick burn. I'm interested in a DAO right now, maybe for a music label DAO, where you would get a group of people who want to invest in a group of artists based on the art that they love. Could be musicians, could be artists, could be poets. Again, the same thing. People have a say in how they market and promote these acts. There'll be thought leaders in that DAO. Obviously, people who are bringing the creatives in. You can't just have this like amorphous DAO for music, because you need somebody to at least say, what do you think of these acts? What do you think of this musician? And then everybody does their part in marketing and promoting, and then ultimately, possibly, having a reward in the monetary side of it. But people always forget that the biggest reward is the success of the music, getting to hear the music.
Right.
People forget that.
Totally. And I think, to your point, that's essentially the purpose of art, is for it to be shared. And so, as you mentioned, these quick burns in the current, say, Web 2.0 climate of social media and things getting attention for surface level, shiny objects. It's like, where's that's so far removed in some respects from what it means to create, and the purpose behind it, and the intent of sharing those messages and experiences. So how do you think Web3 will help kind of cut through that clutter so that we can get back to the art, in what you're saying?
Well, one of the terrible but awesome things about the music business is that the music business is always way behind the technology. Major labels and the labels that have the most money are always the most hesitant to make the change. They did that with streaming. When downloads started with Napster, they wanted hard product because you can make the most money out of that, right? If you sell an item that costs you $2 to manufacture and you sell it for $15.99, you're making a massive profit, right? And streaming for a while, or downloading, really killed the majors. Really, they lost a lot of money until they were able to do deals with the streaming networks to make the money back again. What I think Web3 can do is it can take out a lot of the power that a major label would have, because you're crowdsourcing content based on what people really enjoy, not what a major label is telling you to do. And then when that starts to happen, when you have a bunch of successes and in a sort of decentralized marketed environment for art, eventually that will pull the larger labels that have money into that system, and they will have to reinvent how they market and promote records. It can't. Right now, major labels are looking at who has the highest amount of TikTok followers. If you're a TikTok sensation, they're willing to give you a major label deal. But TikTok is not really a barometer of, do people like your music? They just may think you're quirky, right? Or you may have one song.
Right.
It's not a barometer of like, do I have a real fan base? No, it means that a lot of people at this moment like to watch you on TikTok because you've really tickled the algorithm. And listen, and all of these successes for me are fine. But most musicians that I talk to, and myself personally, is I'm not really interested in the quick burn statistical spike that gets the deal. I always used to use the analogy, you could put out, Picasso could be alive now and put out the most amazing NFT that you've ever seen in your life, multi-dimensional, multi-contract, mind-blowing piece of art. And if Kim Kardashian decides to pull a boob out that day and show it on the internet, you will never hear about Picasso's creation, because that's how base social media is. People are just like, wait, right? It's like they go right to the easiest. They want to consume quickly. And that's no dig on the humanity. It's just sort of like what gets your attention. And so intellectualism doesn't necessarily get the same sort of weight as, I don't know, what's the right word for it? Fanfare, or just, I don't know, just what's the word you would use for social media? I don't know. Just,
I think attention at the end of the day,
Yeah, I mean, it's just you're
saying.
fighting for attention on something that's going to give you bright, shiny colors, and the other thing requires you to think. Even
One's more
myself at the end
substantive.
of the
One's
day.
more substantive. Yeah.
Yeah, one's more substantive, and we all do love substance, but I think sometimes at the end of our very hard working days, we just want to flip through TikTok and laugh at some stuff. I mean, I love TikTok. I've learned a ton of interesting things and laughed at a ton of stuff, but I'm not necessarily finding music there.
Understanding what these platforms can provide, and sure, I'm sure there are some artists that exist on there that are fantastic and you know have both, as you're saying, the quality and the substance of their art reflected in their massive amount of views. But then there's also content that aims to cater to the demographic, you could say, of folks who have just come off of work from an 8-9 hour day, and they just need something to disengage with, and that happens to be it, you know.
Yeah, and and the algorithm is such that those, because of the way people watch those videos, it's really more tuned to that. Now, again, I would say with my own TikTok watching, I watch a lot of like political stuff and how to fix things and cool, like, I don't know, scientific stuff. I've kind of like trained my algorithm to be into that mode, but it's at the pace that I like. It's less memes, it's less, thirsty posts, it's less, it's not that stuff. Like when I first was on TikTok, I was like, is this just a thirst fest? It's just all they're doing is sending me thirsty women the whole time. And I was like, I'm not going to like any of this and see what happens. I'm going to start following other things. And I had to search for it because I didn't really know how to use TikTok. And then once I trained the algorithm, and now it's really great for me. And now I understand why it's cool. Just like you learn how Twitter is cool, just like how Instagram used to be super cool. And Facebook was cool at one point until they destroyed it with algorithms.
Yeah, well, and you bring up an interesting thing too, which I think is something to think about with Web3 as well. Is as much as Web3 and decentralized ways of being, whether it's cryptocurrencies or in this case the sharing of art, there's something from the user's perspective that can be like thinking about, oh, hey, how can I train the algorithm to cater to my preferences, is something that before wasn't even something that people were aware of, you know.
Right. I mean,
So
it's a weird time.
yeah, right. So in many ways, as a creator, it's Web3 is positioning the creation of art as a more accessible is positioning the creation of some art to be more widely accepted and seen, and at the same time empowering the audiences to find that art if that's what they're seeking. Would that be
Yeah, I
accurate to
mean,
say?
I think we've gone through, if we go talk about NFTs specifically, because I feel like there was this sort of handoff from crypto investing when, there was this bubble of crypto investing, and then there was all this money made in crypto, and then NFTs just exploded in this very short amount of time. And then sort of the monetization of NFTs kind of kicked in really quickly. And you had, very, I don't want to call them corporate, but very specifically designed NFTs, done by crews of people with a marketing team to bring up the investment value and to get people super interested in the value of that NFT. And then there was people who were just making art and people were supporting their art. And the people supporting their art is actually how I got interested in NFTs from a contract standpoint, where I heard a couple of podcasts where artists were talking about how they had just made a bunch of weird NFTs and all of a sudden people started buying them. And they were like, I didn't know what I was doing. And I don't really know if I know what I'm doing, but I'm just making my art and now I'm putting it on the internet, via contract. And people are supporting me and I've made enough money now that I can continue to do this. And so, now I'm really learning about what it means to make digital art, even if they were traditional artists. And then what I got interested in is the multi-contract concept of an NFT, so that not only could you support an artist, whether it be through music or music and visuals, but that contract can evolve. So maybe you start out being like, okay, hey, support my act. I've got 12 songs that I want, that I want you to invest in. If we get enough investors, you'll be the round one, and we'll then use that money to market and promote the music. And then since you got in earlier, now that I understand more about what my fans want, now the early investors can have the second contract on top of my NFT, which is like maybe 50% off of my live shows or whatever it may be. Or you own X amount on the publishing of these songs because you were early investors. You don't have to make all those decisions right off the bat. There can be contract on top of contract on top of contract. And I think that that's really interesting because it allows you to not put all of your eggs in one basket and figure it all out at the get-go. Because maybe what you did in the beginning is not where you want to be a year later artistically, but you still want to reward your fans, the people who supported you in the beginning. And you don't want to be like, well, I'm not really interested in doing that type of music anymore, so you guys are kind of screwed, right? Thank you for the investment, but that's the end of it. You could just port that contract onto your new music and be like, you know what? I'm going to add these songs in now. This is where I'm headed. You guys have a piece of this too. Or you have access to, like meeting me at whatever, whenever you're in your city, like we used to do with street teams. So I really learned street team marketing in the sense that we had a street team guy with Ming and FS that would travel with us. And we, way before social media, we would reach out to fans and find the super fans at every show. We would see the same faces. We'd come to Seattle, we'd see familiar faces. We'd go to LA, we'd see familiar faces. And I would tell Jeffrey, at the time was his name, go get those people after the show and make sure you bring them backstage because I see them at every show. Let's meet them. Let's get their email addresses. Let's talk to them so that next time we come, we have a relationship with them and put them on the guest list because they've been here at 2 or 3 shows, right? So we would do that. And then the next time we would come to Seattle, so to speak, we would hit these people up ahead of time, say, hey, were you planning on coming to the show? Yeah, man, I can't believe you guys actually reached out. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll put you on the guest list and you guys have like 5 VIP spots. They can like get half off, bring some friends. You guys are on the guest list. If and then we would do things like, hey, we're going to be in town early. Do you want to have a barbecue? Do you know of anyone having a party before like whatever? Could we come and like have a barbecue at your place? And they'd be like, what? I'm like, yeah, do you think maybe people would be into it if like, we don't want to hang out in the hotel. We want to come hang out with you. And then they would have a barbecue with like 30, 40 friends over. We would show up. They'd be like, these guys actually showed up. We would have a great time. We already knew them from the last show, right? And so we started to create this family that we had on the road. So it was much more than just empty hotels. And, and just like, it wasn't about being a star. It was about playing music. So I see the same thing with NFTs and contracts where you can have this ongoing relationship with people who support you at whatever stage they want to come in and from whatever level they can give you. And you can have this like back and forth relationship, be it via a digital relationship now. That doesn't have to necessarily be you can only get value by coming to my show or you can only get value by supporting my whatever. Maybe the value is you just want to like have a mentoring session with an artist that you love and like so you supported them, and part of being a first rounder is that you get to get a little bit of mentorship to talk about your own music career and how you could be successful. And successful people like to talk about how they were successful, right? I love sharing my success stories with people and helping them with their music and helping them figuring out how to do their career their way. And I feel like again that could be part of the contract. It's just infinite, right? It's not like one mode anymore. It's right. It's not like I'm the forward facing musician. You have to give me things all the time in order for me to exist. We can have a back and forth relationship based on a set of terms that we describe and we figure out together.
Right. So in many ways you're saying it's more, mutually beneficial, but it's more alive. It's more of an ever changing, ever evolving dynamic that caters to both the art and the trajectory of an artist and the needs of, say, a supporter or a fan or whomever else is in the artist's orbit. And what's really interesting is what you were talking about in terms of the street teams and the sort of transition from what used to be perhaps a backyard barbecue when you're on the road to that same type of feeling, but now you can do that with an artist who might be across the globe, but is someone who you would love to have that type of proximity to or support for. And I think that's really neat, and how DAOs and NFTs can kind of help make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, we have all these ways of reaching out to fans now, like Discord and Twitch, and right. So say I had a community for my music where I'm doing regular Twitch broadcasts, whatever that may be, and anyone can be part of that. They can they can be a supporter on Twitch or whatever. But then I have my own private hour with people who are some more like in the music DAO, right? What if I have a private hour for, maybe there's a group of music makers in there who want to spend an hour a week or have access to an hour a week talking about their productions, or having like a master class with somebody where I'm giving back time for them supporting the DAO in general. And then that makes them more apt, to work on their creations, because then they can become part of that from a creative standpoint in that DAO. Maybe that's your goal. I think people forget why we join groups. Why do you go to college? You go to college or university because you like the things that college has for you. It's not only intellectual, it's social. Maybe you like the teams. Maybe they have a great music program. Maybe they have a great baseball program. We join groups to fit in and feel good about ourselves, and to meet new people and to challenge ourselves. And what ends up happening with social media is that instead of being challenged, we find comfortable spaces, and then they become circular, and then the algorithms just beat it to death. But if you set up a system in which you can create organizations that are sort of monitored by themselves, DAOs, so to with thought leaders, you can really create the same sort of atmospheres that you do in a college setting or in a club setting or on a team. I mean, look, if you can't, having a universal DAO for music doesn't make sense. It's just too many ways of, right? Too many different types of music. But if you're into, say, house music, and you want to support my house music DAO, and our goal is to find 10 new producers, this year, and to bring in X amount of money for marketing, and to have you help market, and then to have them come and play in your city. Maybe there's people who are promoters who want to be part of this DAO, right? We all can work together to keep this scene moving. That's not necessarily part of a machine. That's a fun club to be part of. And that's the club that I was part of when I was DJing, when it wasn't cool. You would find other DJs in other cities who would be like, oh man, I'm really into drum and bass. I've got a small party. It's got 200 people. Would you come play, in whatever small town? And, even being from New York, you'd be like, yeah, I'm going to play that town. Because you know what, when I get there, that's 200 people who are going to lose their minds because they're into it like I'm into it. It's so much better than playing for 5,000 people who are like separated by a big guard, like a big fence that you're so far away from. That's not the same energy. One pays you a lot more, but it doesn't feel the same. Mm-hmm. So that's what's always excited me, is sort of, and maybe how I've been successful as a musician, is that there's always these niche markets that have really tickled me intellectually and that have challenged me to grow, because they're not as rote, so to speak. They're not paths that you can easily go down. You have to be part of it. Like you don't just wake up one day and become a goth, right? You don't just go to like Urban Outfitters and get your black boots and your black pants and your black shirts and your chains and your makeup and your hips. That doesn't just happen. That's not really what being a goth is. You like the music, you're attracted to the people, you're attracted to the mindset. You become part of that group. It's not a mainstream group, right? And so it's a subculture that you have to enjoy to be part of. And those that aren't part of the subculture really are perpetrators of, like, it's fraud, and you don't really stick around.
Sure. Well, and to your point, it's like in the same way that you're seeking out those avenues that stimulate you intellectually. If you're pursuing, the goth path, that's a choice though, and it's an interest, and it's something that you're consciously deciding to do. So in the same way, if you're choosing to support a DAO, you're investing your time, energy, mental capacity in support of a particular, in this case, if you're saying EDM, it's like, or house music, there's a specific directive to all of that. So it's, yeah, I think it's really fascinating that essentially, kind of what you said at the onset of the conversation, we're coming back to the sort of homegrown with Web3 potentially. We can come back to that homegrown. Basically, it's kind of artistical intimacy on a larger scale.
Let me digress a teeny bit because I've been thinking about that concept. Because recently, didn't someone create a DAO to try to buy a copy of the Constitution or something, right? I love that concept because they had one focus in mind. A lot of people put in what they could put in. They didn't, ultimately get there, but I think they raised a tremendous amount of money. So what about taking that same concept for your town? Never mind Democrat, Republican, Green, whatever party you think you affiliate with. If you need a new bridge in your town, what if you had a DAO for that bridge? Right? What if everybody in town, regardless of what you believed in, knew that you needed to like pave this certain area of your town? There's all kinds of interesting applications for DAOs if you have a focused mindset, right? It's like crowdsourcing without having to beg for the money in a lot of ways, right? What if the DAO was a fund? See, maybe your town was a place where there was a lot of you wanted to have preserve land because you had an amazing influx of birds that came in through migration, and for some reason the state or whatever wasn't able to give you grant money for that land, and you wanted to stop developers from building on these certain areas because you knew there was these cliff swallows or something, right? Well, your town could have a DAO that put money together that bought that land for the DAO's trust, and then the DAO could own that land. There's a lot of amazing applications on with a tight directive that you could do, through a DAO. Trusts, right? Sort of like a public trust. But the cool thing about that public trust is that maybe your mission, which could be to preserve this land that birds come to every year, is not just an issue for your town. It becomes a global issue because people all over the world want you to preserve that migration path. And so now you have a DAO that the whole world can be part of, because they know that if the birds start up in Canada, they fly down the East Coast and eventually they end up in Mexico. Well, maybe you're in Mexico and you just want to make sure that path is safe for them. And so that idea of DAOs and emerging like contracts upon contracts for social good is really interesting to me as well.
So using DAOs for social good, is there an intersection between social good and art? And what people are supporting could also be something artistic?
I think 100%. I mean, I don't know that you can detach true artistic creation from social platforms. I've always been very political. I'm very liberal. I have, I'm super intellectual. I'm into science. Like, I'm into technology. If you support my music, you're supporting the liberal agenda, which is basically to become more intellectual, right? I'm open to all walks of life. I'm open to whatever you want to do as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, right? I'm an atheist, but I don't, like there's all these things that you subscribe to when you support the artist, right? Doesn't mean you have to be all of those things, but I think that I don't know many artists or musicians that are not liberal minded and don't want good things for large groups of people. So I do think that there's always an aspect of creation that is trying to bring people into a better place. I always hope that my music will help somebody in a bad place get to a good place, or at least hold on to something. I know as a kid, as a teen, I found, solace in certain music that really helped me get through parts of my life that were, difficult as a teen. We all have that same teen angst and trying to figure out who we are. And we identify with musicians and music that brings us in a certain direction. And yes, I think that, all of those aspects are intertwined. If you want to support, let me give a perfect example is if you support house music, then you support gay culture. They're not separate. They're one and the same, because house music is an important part of gay culture, and you do not have to be gay or active in any other way, but you need to know that it is absolutely insane to be anti-LGBTQ and be into house music. Like that's just it's sort of like saying, I like hamburgers but I hate buns. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like if you eat a hamburger with a bun but say like I hate the bun, then don't eat the bun. But you're not eating a hamburger, then you're eating hamburger meat. When you support art, you're supporting a movement, and you're supporting things that go along with that art.
As you're saying, when you're supporting an artist, you're supporting sort of their beliefs and their outlooks on life, stuff like that. Where do you see the future of Web3, of NFTs, of these sort of DAO contracts leading us in the coming months, years, etc.?
I mean, I think right now, I'll give you the now, couple weeks, and in the future. I think right now, because of the crypto crash and sort of the massive rush into graphic NFTs, that people are a little bit shell shocked with sort of the extreme success and now the extreme failure of a lot of projects. I mean, I've been part of a lot of whitelists where people were hoping to do very well, and they can't even make their mint price. So I think right now we're a little bit on pause as to the one-dimensional, as I call them, graphic NFT, sort of to get money or to make money process. And I think over the next coming months, we're going to see more multi-contract, more roadmap-oriented NFTs, where it's more than just a good-looking ape that you're going to own, and have as a trading card, which I don't dislike. Don't get me wrong. And I think in the future we're going to see a lot more utility, and utility is really what's going to become the backbone of the NFT and of Web3 and of DAOs. Like if there's not utility to it, things can only remain cool for so long. Just as some art isn't cool, it might be cool for a little bit and then something else becomes cool and then it loses its value. But utility is important. And I think contracts with utility and art with utility and music with utility in some way, whatever that may be, 6 months from now, a year from now, is really where we're headed.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much.
It's another episode of the Decent People podcast by Essential Media. I'm your host, Steve Ladden. This has been a fantastic chat with Aaron Albano, also known as Ming. Aaron, thank you.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you guys soon.